Hi, Skip. Welcome. We're so happy to have you today. And so I would love to know, Skip, tell me a little bit more just about who you are and Coomber Consulting. How did you guys get started? What type of businesses are you helping?
Well, thank you very much. I am an attorney, member of the California State Bar since 1990. I'm a business, real estate, and tax attorney. This is what I do. Along the way, we had a number of different investments, my wife and I, including owning a winery in downtown Oceanside and soon to be in Vista. I've been a trusted advisor to dozens and dozens of people over the years, businesses and nonprofit organizations. I've been on a dozen nonprofit boards, raised $6 million to build a school for at-risk kids up in LA. I formed Coomber Consulting 3.5 years ago to add to the services for my clients. And so we bring tax benefited programs to busy business owners and nonprofit CEOs. They don't have the time to research these. They don't know who to trust. Now they have an attorney who's been practicing since 1990 who can give them thoughtful advice.
And that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, with Coomber Consulting, what type of businesses do you help? And I also hear that there's a current tax credit that many businesses don't know that they can qualify for.
We help all kinds of employers, businesses and nonprofits. Currently, we're focusing on the Employee Retention Tax Credit Program because we have a deadline approaching April 15th of 2025. This is a refundable tax credit, meaning that qualified employers will actually receive checks back from the Treasury.
Wow. Okay. Now, when you say checks back, can you tell me a little bit more about what that means for current people that are applying for this tax credit?
Sure. Congress created the CARES Act. We've all heard about it. It had the PPP and the Employee Retention Tax Credit Program. We're talking about the second one. We call it the ERTC. Qualified employers can receive up to $7,000 per quarter of the first, second, or third quarter of 2021 for each W-2 2021 employee.
Wow, that's big news. That's big news.
It's very, very beneficial to them. I hate to see them leave it on the table.
Mm-hmm. Now, Skip, for business owners across the United States, how many employees do they actually need to qualify for this tax program?
Well, today they could have an unlimited number of employees. The operative time period and number of employees was 2019, 500 or fewer employees in that year. Very specific way of determining that and counting it, but that's what we do.
Okay, great. So if a business owner wants to apply for the Employee Retention Tax Credit Program, could they have one or two employees that were? What's the framework for that? Like, how do they actually qualify just with one or two employees?
Sure. It really doesn't matter how few employees they have. They're entitled to, if they qualify, up to $7,000 per 2021 W-2 employee per quarter, the first 3 quarters. So a total of possibly $21,000. Now,
this is just for 2021. Could you clarify that? How many years would they qualify for this tax credit since COVID?
Sure. The 3 operative quarters are the first, second, and third quarter of 2021.
Of 2021.
Yes.
Okay.
What were the wages that you paid to W-2
employees during that time? That's so helpful. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Okay, so Skip, I understand that you have some exciting news for business owners in San Diego and across the nation today regarding this tax credit. Tell me a little bit about it.
Sure. Well, the rules have changed. It's a new game. And many employers that felt they didn't qualify before because of IRS guidelines that were in place now may qualify. The IRS guidelines are all rendered moot by a recent Supreme Court case, Loper Bright Enterprises.
And so in simple terms, what is the Employee Retention Tax Credit Program and who qualifies?
So employers who had W-2 employees in 2021, the first, second, and third quarters of 2021.
If
they fit the definition of a small business as Congress characterized it. And if they qualify through one of 2 different tests per each quarter, then they can receive that $7,000 per employee.
Wonderful. And
per quarter.
Per quarter. And how do businesses receive this now? And what is the deadline for this?
So the important thing is the deadline is April 15th of 2025, coming up in just a couple of months. Mm-hmm. That's the deadline for filing and amending your wage payroll tax returns. That's the deadline for amending your payroll tax returns.
Got it. And so at Coomber Consulting, businesses can come to you anytime between now and the deadline. They can provide simple paperwork to you. You can get everything submitted and hopefully get them their refund by the end of the year.
Hopefully by the end of the year.
Okay.
We'll see. Yeah. I wouldn't wait until April 15th to reach out to us, though. We're going to get inundated. We're already very busy, but we'll get swamped, the last 30 days or so.
I imagine. Well, this is wonderful news for local business owners here in San Diego and across the nation that this is available and that they can still take advantage of this. So, Skip, you're based here in sunny San Diego, but really anybody in the nation can reach out to you because you in fact are an expert in this tax for this tax credit. I mean, you've done your research. You know how to get top dollar for business owners throughout the United States. And so I'm so excited for business owners to take advantage of this.
Well, thank you. No, I've traveled all over the country in the last 3.5 years. We have over 300 employers that we've worked with. I've traveled to Omaha and Kansas City. We have clients in New York, almost every state.
We'll travel to you. That's wonderful.
Yeah, so any employer in the United States may qualify.
That's wonderful news.
Kristen, it's a whole new game out there. A number of clients, in fact, over 500 potential clients that I spoke with decided not to do the ERTC, not to claim their rightful benefits, primarily because they had CPAs that frightened them and said this would be a problem.
I heard about that, yeah.
We've only had 1 quarter audited out of over 1,500 quarters. It's just not something that's the case.
It just takes the fear out of it.
But now, since the Loper-Bright Supreme Court case this summer, June 28th, 2024, all of the IRS regulations restricting your ability to qualify are gone.
Wow.
Now the only thing that matters is Congress's language. Were you impacted by a government order?
Wow. That's so helpful. It's so helpful for businesses just to be able to bypass those rules that were set up. I mean, it just sounds like it was more of a hurdle and more of an inconvenience than anything. So I'm so happy to hear that that's been cleared up. So Skip, I have a friend, local business owner, and they were told that it was a red flag to file for the tax credit for the ERTC. Why were people thinking that, and what's been done about that?
So CPAs were generally concerned about the IRS. They felt that this would open the door for the IRS to come in and look under all the covers, when in fact that's not the case. I had, as a public speaker, I have had the opportunity to speak several times on a panel with the former IRS commissioner who implemented the ERTC. In front of about 1,000 people, I said, well, do you think that filing for the ERTC is a red flag? And he said, no, I don't think so at all.
Okay, so there's the word right there. So that's wonderful. Now, Skip, how can people get in touch with you? I know that you've been so helpful already for business owners to receive this tax credit. How can they get in touch with you? What would they need to file for this credit?
So 2 questions there. How to get a hold of us. I'm sure at the end of the podcast there's going to be a link.
Okay.
But you can just go to coomberconsulting.com, or you can send an email to skip@coomberconsulting.com, or you can call my mobile number, 858-354-3910.
Wonderful.
Now, the second part, the second question is, what do they have to give for us? Very simple. A handful of documents that we need to process the claim and be sure that you qualify. And our staff takes care of that. It's less than an hour's work by the employer's staff. Very simple.
That's so simple. So That's great. Well, thank you so much, Skip. It's been wonderful having you today. I'm so excited for all the business owners that you're going to be able to help and just their stories of how they're continuing to prosper.
The pleasure is all mine. Look, wineries qualify. Those in the food and beverage industry in general qualify. Contractors, all different kinds of law firms, all different kinds of businesses. If you were an employer and your operations were interrupted by a government order, there's a high chance you qualify. Let a tax professional tell you if it's the case.
Is there anybody that wouldn't qualify for this that's a business owner?
Sure. They're few and far between, but there definitely are situations where they wouldn't qualify. I'll give you an example of someone I spoke with. They owned a used car lot. They had no office. They had no salespeople. They just stood out there in their parking in their used car lot and interacted with people. They were able to do everything that they were doing during COVID that they had been doing before COVID.
I see.
So there was no supply chain problem. They weren't waiting for tires to come in or spare parts. They were not sufficiently impacted, and we let them know that.
Mm-hmm. So an example of a business that was impacted by COVID, can you go into some things that this business would have been experiencing?
Oh my gosh, medical offices. They had so many restrictions. They had to have all these special masks. They had to test everyone who came in. They had to sanitize. If anyone had an elevated temperature, they weren't allowed to. At the last minute, they have an appointment to come in and get their work done or take their tests. And if they tested high temperature, they weren't allowed to let them in. Well, now there's a time period that's not being utilized, and you have your whole staff there. So if someone in your office had an elevated temperature or any indication of a sickness, you had to send them home for 2 weeks. And by the way, anyone that had been in their proximity beforehand. So medical organizations were terrifically impacted, although they were essential. And there is this thought, many businesses that were deemed essential felt that they couldn't qualify. That's not the case. We've qualified dozens and dozens of essential businesses that have their operations impacted by government orders, as I have described right now with these medical operations. Dentists, tons and tons of dentists.
Dentists, yeah. And so if somebody's not sure if they qualify for this tax credit, they need to give you a call.
Yeah, just call us. Because
if they do qualify, then they could be out, thousands and maybe even millions of dollars if they never found out what they qualified for.
Look, I've been practicing law in California since 1990. I'm a trusted advisor. I'm not going to tell you qualify if you don't qualify. I've got my professional hat on, and I'm giving you a professional opinion.
Now, Skip, I've heard that a lot of businesses actually, they don't think they qualify for this tax credit because they actually did exceptionally well during COVID. Why is there that assumption? And can these businesses that actually made a profit qualify for this tax credit?
It's a complicated law, and it takes someone who focuses on it to fully understand it. The answer is, you could have done very well in COVID, but as long as your operations were impacted by a government order, you may qualify. Our winery did quite well during COVID. Our wine club members stepped up and bought extra bottles of wine to help us, and so we did quite well. But yet, because of the impacts on our business that we were not essential at first, and we weren't allowed to have customers come in. We ultimately, when we were able to open, we could only have a limited number of people in there. We qualified.
Well, thank you so much for bringing clarity to that, Skip. And now, so businesses that want to get in touch around the country, want to get in touch with you, want to take advantage of this. Do you offer a free consultation? I mean, how do you actually begin to even start the process with a business owner?
So all they have to do is reach out to us. We will schedule an appointment. We'll have a call. We'll ask them some questions. If we believe they probably qualify, we'll move forward. We'll ask them for documents. They'll sign a fee agreement with us. But they're never going to be out of pocket any money. This will be a pure contingency matter, and they won't ever owe us anything until they actually have those green checks from the Treasury in hand.
That's wonderful news, Skip. I mean, there's really no reason not to see if they qualify. So thank you so much.
They have nothing at risk.
Skip, what is the biggest misconception about the employee retention credit?
Well, I wish there were only one. There are multiple misconceptions. One is that they don't qualify. Their CPA told them they didn't qualify under the old rules that IRS had in place. Maybe they didn't qualify. But those rules are all gone now because of the Loper-Bright Supreme Court matter.
Okay.
So that's the first misconception. The second misconception would be that they did pretty well during COVID. That doesn't matter.
Wow.
There are two tests.
That's not a factor.
You only have to qualify under one test, either the gross receipts test or the government orders test.
So it's either or now.
Either or. It always has been either or.
And what are those tests? Are they easy tests, or what's needed for them?
Well, the gross receipts is a comparison of your revenue.
Okay.
For the quarters in question back to the same quarters in 2019.
I see, from 2019.
Yeah, I won't bore them with the details on that. They're either going to qualify. It's very black and white.
Okay.
The second test is the government orders test. And Congress wrote an employer qualifies if its operations were suspended temporarily or permanently by a legitimate government order. So we analyze if you were sufficiently impacted. Now, as I said, the IRS had a number of regulations in place, but those are all rendered moot now. It's a whole new ballgame. So the third misconception would be that it's a red flag for the IRS. Oh my God, if you apply for this, you're going to get audited. It's not the case. We worked with employers that qualified over 1,500 quarters. In the last 3.5 years, we only had one quarter audited. That's 0.0007%. That's not exactly a red flag.
I agree.
So those are three primary misconceptions.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing them. I'm sure that clears it up for a lot of folks out there. So thank you. So Skip, tell me about some of the businesses that you've already helped and what type of businesses qualify for this tax credit.
Well, we've helped all different types of businesses, food and beverage organizations, wineries, breweries, restaurants, car dealerships, auto dealerships, medical organizations, dentists, doctors, surgery centers, small hospitals. Although they were essential, they were definitely impacted.
Absolutely.
And so we've just handled so many different, and then we move on to the nonprofits. We've represented dozens of nonprofit organizations, and they've all benefited from this return of their payroll taxes.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. Now, with the nonprofits and some of the businesses that you have helped, what are some personal stories and how has this tax credit helped these businesses really just improve and get off the ground again?
Well, with respect to nonprofits, this is a significant amount of money on a percentage basis relative to their annual budget. So we've had stories where this money, when it came in, represented 1/3 to at least a half of their next fiscal budget.
Wow, that's huge.
Took a lot of pressure off of them with respect to fundraising.
Wow, that's incredible. And now some of the different types of businesses and local businesses that you've helped, what are some stories like of people that have received this credit? How have they benefited?
Well, we've handled organizations from federal credit unions to, as I said, medical organizations. Each organization is benefited in its own way. And so it enables certain organizations, certain businesses to expand their operations, whether it's through geographical expansion or expanding their employee work pool. So it's all different kinds of benefits.
That's wonderful. And now with this tax credit, what are the most productive things that you're seeing businesses do with this money that's coming back?
Well, right now, for many of them, it's enabling them to stay in business. They've been teetering. This money's been a long time coming. Mm-hmm. So as it comes now, it's making a difference, enable them to keep their employees on payroll. We know literally dozens, if not hundreds of stories of employers who, ironically, because their money wasn't paid when anticipated, when they didn't receive their refunds when anticipated, they've had to lay off employees, which is ironic given that this was to benefit them for keeping their employees on payroll.
Well, thank you so much for helping these businesses with your professional expertise, as well as you're an entrepreneur. So you know what it's like to go through COVID, all the unknowns, and you could really empathize with a lot of business owners out there. So you can get in touch with Skip. He's available. He's happy to take your questions. He offers free consultations. And thank you so much, Skip.
Thank you. We welcome the opportunity to have that conversation with employers.
Tell me, are there any restrictions out there that the government is giving regarding how businesses can actually use this tax credit refund when it comes in?
That's an interesting question. One misconception along that idea is that this, unlike the PPP loans, which were public, this is just a personal interaction between the employer and the IRS.
I see.
This is classified as a refund of payroll taxes that you paid. So this is just a tax refund, and you're entitled to do anything you want with that money.
That's good news. That's the good news for a lot of business owners. Thank you. And now, Skip, tell me a little bit about, now that you've been able to help some of these businesses qualify and receive this tax credit, how much money are you seeing come in and help these businesses?
Having worked with over 300 different employers, our clients are set to ultimately receive literally hundreds of millions of dollars.
Wow. That's huge.
Employers owe themselves a conversation with us to see if they qualify.
Interesting. So now it's up to the judge, no longer up to the IRS.
That's correct. So we'll have judicial rulings. Congress didn't put any threshold with respect to how damaged you had to be. So now that's between us and a judge.
That's good to know. Thank you so much for clearing that up. Thank you so much, Skip. It's been an honor to be here with you today, and we look forward to all the businesses that you're going to help.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to present this to you and to people who might be listening or watching this podcast.